am Michael Jackson. It was on Friday gone by that we had a fascinating, unique, painful conversation with a man serving time. In fact, the past 9 months, he's been in solitary confinement. Our guest called us from the penitentiary on Terminal Island in Long Beach, California. He was Dr., formerly Green Beret Captain Jeffrey MacDonald. And just in case you weren't with us, we learned how this man, who spent 9 years behind bars thus far, and he might well be there forever, having been found guilty in the murder of his wife and 2 young daughters. The question that was going through my mind during the entire conversation was, what if? What if he's not guilty? What if he is innocent and himself a victim? The Army had found for him, but then years later, a civilian court found him guilty as charged. The conversation was pretty powerful. At the end of the hour, we spoke briefly with Ted Gunderson, who came in yesterday on the program. He's been 27 and a half years with the FBI. He was chief of the bureau in L.A. and Dallas and Memphis, all the right credentials. He told us he was convinced that MacDonald is innocent, and he named the murderer. Well, apparently, let me find out whether he was listening. He heard about it if he wasn't. Fred Kassab, the father of Mrs. MacDonald and the grandfather of the murdered children. Good afternoon, sir.
How are you?
I'm more important. How are you?
Thank you.
Mr. Kassab, were you listening?
I have a copy of the tape that MacDonald did with you, but I didn't hear any part of Ted Gunderson's broadcast.
Okay. Was your son-in-law the murderer?
Oh, there's no doubt whatsoever. And the evidence was completely presented in court. Contrary to what he said, they proved a complete case against him. All the circuit courts, the courts of appeals, and even the U.S. Supreme Court have said that the evidence against MacDonald was more than sufficient to convict. What
convinced you, and was that conviction prior to the case?
I was convinced prior to the trial in 1979, because when I finally got a copy of the Army's transcripts of their pretrial hearings, I had a doubt in my mind, and I pushed Congress for a reinvestigation, and I got involved in the reinvestigation and became thoroughly convinced that he was guilty.
Why would he do it?
That is something only he can be able to tell us. We have no idea what happened in that house that night. He's the only one that knows.
Why do you think, sir, that he finds it so necessary to keep on trying to prove his innocence?
Well, everything he said to you on the air on Friday
is
a repetition of his filing for a new trial in 1984.
By the way, I would be surprised if it was different, and convinced that he was a liar if it was. I mean, by now, surely he knows his story.
You see, everything...
Innocent or guilty.
That's right. Everything that he told you on Friday, all about this new evidence, was presented in court when he filed for a new trial in 1984. Now, just let me give you a slight idea. The judge filed a 110-page report on that filing. It was sustained by the circuit courts and the U.S. Supreme Court. But what the judge concluded at the end was that the newly discovered evidence, with its multiple inaccuracies and inconsistencies, would not produce a different result were it introduced at a second trial, nor is there any reasonable likelihood that a jury would acquit MacDonald based on the newly discovered evidence.
Why do you think the Army found for him?
Well, the Army ruled that there was insufficient evidence on which to court-martial him. Now, that is the exact ruling that was handed down by General Tolson. He keeps referring to Colonel Rock's statement that the evidence was, was untrue, in other words. But that is in a report that he had to file, and it says, are the facts true or untrue? Now, and then he used the word untrue because he didn't, in his estimation, didn't have enough evidence on which to court-martial a man.
So, what about Helena Stokely, I think the name was, Ted Gunderson, amongst others, have talked about her confession. In fact, Mr. Gunderson says he has a signed confession.
Yes, which she also repudiated after she made it to him. And not only that, she's confessed many, many times, and then turned around and repudiated each confession. Now, the confession she gave Gunderson in writing, which he signed, one of Gunderson's own agents, a man who worked for Gunderson, who was also an ex-FBI agent, signed a statement saying that Gunderson used coercion to get that Confession.
Wow.
That's in the court documents. I'm not giving you hot air.
1 second. I've just been told Mr. Gunderson has called through. Can he respond to that?
Yes.
Freddie Kassab's on the line. Did you hear what was just said, Mr. Gunderson?
I'm on the line.
Yes, sir. How do you respond to that?
Well, it's absolutely not true. Homer Young is the agent that said that. Helena Stokely did not...
No, let's get back to what your agent said.
That's what I'm talking about. Homer Young's... Freddie, Homer Young is the agent who made that statement.
Right.
Who talked
He
to
worked
the
for you?
He worked for me. That's right.
That's all. That's enough.
Okay, well, can I say more? Or
Of course.
Enough, Fred.
Be my guest.
Okay. Let me tell you about Homer Young's involvement in this case. Homer Young worked for me for a period of about a year and a half, and he worked for me during the period that we brought Helena Stokely back here in October and again in December of 1980. Now, as a matter, Prince Beasley was with me, and I used Prince Beasley on the interview primarily because Beasley had worked with Helena as an informant. I mean, she had been his informant. And so on one occasion, Homer had an office next to mine. He worked for me. On one occasion, out of courtesy to Homer, and Homer felt, by the way, that Dr. McDonald was innocent all along, and still does to this day, and he's told me so. Out of courtesy to Homer, I brought Homer in. I said, Homer, would you like to sit in on this interview with Helena? And so Homer came in and sat down for about, I'd say, 35 minutes and asked her one or two questions. And by the way, this is on the tape. And Homer had to get up and leave because in Los Angeles, if you stay past 3:30 in the afternoon, well, that's damned you can't get home, and he had quite a distance to go.
But you did not coerce her into signing?
Absolutely not. Michael, everything that Helena Stokely gave me and told me about is on the tape. The tape
but she repudiated it.
She didn't repudiate it, Fred.
Oh, yes, she did.
No, she didn't. Let me tell you what she did.
How can you sit there and lie?
I'm not lying. If you will wait just a minute,
Well, could you both take a break with me for a second, and I'd love to pursue this. Neutral corners for a moment, if I may, and I think you both care passionately about the issue. Fred Kassab, because he's the father of Mrs. MacDonald, she was killed, of course, and the grandfather of the murdered children, Fred Kassab. On the other line, Ted Gunderson, former FBI chief in Los Angeles. I'm Michael Jackson, and this is KABC Talk Radio AM 790.
KABC Talk Radio 790.
Again, this is something unplanned. I'm glad it's happening. It's most enlightening and confusing. On our two separate conference lines, Fred Kassab, father of the murdered Mrs. MacDonald and the two children, in other words, his grandchildren, and Ted Gunderson, the former FBI chief in Dallas and Memphis and Los Angeles. Mr. Kassab, what about the fact that, a claim, I should say, made by Dr. MacDonald that there were bloody clothes that were held back as evidence?
All right, may I go into that?
Please, of course.
I haven't finished my part.
Now.
Okay, both of you.
Bloody clothing and boots. The bloody clothing never existed. There was a pair of boots that were turned over to the CID that McDonald says they didn't know about until, God knows, 1980 something or other. Now, when those boots were turned over to the CID, two of McDonald's lawyers were present and signed receiving the pair of boots. There was no clothing involved whatsoever. The boots were examined in the laboratory and found not to have any blood on them whatsoever. And furthermore than that, the boots were of a different color than that McDonald described as the girl was supposed to be wearing that night.
Mr. Gunderson?
Okay, let me go back. We're getting way ahead. I haven't finished.
Okay, go ahead, sir.
I haven't finished with... Freddie says that Helena repudiated her statement many times. Let me say this. I interviewed... Prince Beasley and I interviewed her in October.
Well, let's not get into Prince Beasley.
Now, wait a minute, Freddie. I have my chance to talk. Now, you had yours. Okay. Prince Beasley and I interviewed Helena in October 1980. We had another session with her in December 1980. And then in the summer of 1981, she was contacted by the FBI, and they interviewed her. They took a statement from her. I had heard that she never repudiated. I didn't hear that she repudiated her statement that she gave us, but she gave. I'm not sure what she said because she never told me after that. But in May of 1982, she called me from South Carolina, said she wanted to talk to me again. So I went back to South Carolina, and by that time, her husband, Ernie, was serving time for rape. He was convicted of raping one of the neighbors. And at that time, Alina told me that she had been contacted by the FBI at the insistence of Ernie Davis, and had given them some statements, but she did not tell me what she said in that statement. She told me she did not repudiate, that basically the information that she gave us before, she was giving it again. She repeated it. We took another series of signed statements and had her on tape. She said that she talked to the FBI in the summer of 1981 because she was afraid of her husband. Her husband had beaten her up before, and also the FBI insisted on talking to her, and she felt that she...
You're convinced she's the murderer?
There's no doubt in my mind.
Okay, I've got so many calls incoming from all over the country now. Let's take another brief break, and if you would, gentlemen, because they're concerned about the story, maybe you'd respond. Fred Kassab and Ted Gunderson. I'm Michael Jackson, Talk Radio.
KABC, Talk Radio 790.
This is Talk Radio. I'm Michael Jackson. I just learned on my computer here that apparently Dr. MacDonald, the Green Beret who was found guilty of the murders, who's serving time, is listening at this very moment. So if you wish to, if you'll give a call to Gail, she will tell you how to get through to us immediately. I can't call you. On our conference line still, though, Fred Kassab, your father-in-law. It was his daughter and grandchildren who were murdered. And Ted Gunderson, the man who believes in your innocence, Captain. And... Mr. Gunderson, what about the fact that he claims that there were bloody clothes held back as evidence? Mr. Kassab has just said there weren't any.
Let me say this, Michael. Prince Beasley and I talked to a lady in Fayetteville, North Carolina in 1980 who gave us an oral statement that Kathy Perry had come to live with her shortly after the murders, that there was bloody clothing, there were bloody boots, and she said she turned these items over to the government, and some of them were returned at a later date, some were not returned at a later date. Michael, before I go any further, I'd like to point out one thing. I have in front of me a quote from the Article 32 hearing, which was in 1970 by the Army. At the conclusion of the hearing, the following recommendations were made, and I'm quoting. Number one, all charges and specifications against Captain Jeffrey R. MacDonald be dismissed because the matters set forth in all charges and specifications are not true. There are no lesser charges and or specifications which are appropriate. And two, that appropriate civilian authorities be requested to investigate the alibi of Alina Stokely, Fayetteville, North Carolina,
and
her activities and whereabouts during the early morning hours of 17 February 1970 based on evidence presented during this hearing. Mr. Kassab just got through saying that the Army said that they ruled in favor of MacDonald because there was insufficient evidence to convict him. That's not true.
Gentlemen, for a moment, if I may. Mr. Kassab, when did you last speak to your former son-in-law?
I think in 1972.
1972. He's on the line.
I'm not interested in talking to him. Let me add one thing to what Mr. Gunderson has just said.
Okay.
He quoted from Colonel Rock, and what he is quoting is a recommendation. The word recommendation is in there, not a decision. The decision by General Tolson, and I have it in writing, is that the charges were dropped due to insufficient evidence.
Well, I just read a quote.
Colonel Rock could not make it.
Do either of you have a question you'd like to ask Dr. MacDonald? He's on the line from the prison.
I think that Freddie should ask Dr.
I'm
MacDonald.
not going to ask him anything.
Dr. MacDonald?
Yes, I'm here.
Your father-in-law is convinced that you are guilty. Don't you understand that?
Well, he was as equally convinced of my innocence in 1970.
That's correct.
The problem is Freddie flip-flops depending on the wind, and I sympathized with him for many years because, as many people do, he had to have a scapegoat and he had to have a point in which he could pour out his feelings about these horrible tragedies. I became that point in about 1971.
Yeah, but you may be the murderer, sir.
I'm sorry?
You may be as guilty as sin.
Yeah, but I'm not. That's the problem. The government knows that at this point. I think probably Freddie does, but he's talked himself into such a hole now that he's unable to, I think, really look at the facts anymore in any objective fashion.
Ted Gunderson, what if you're defending a man who's guilty?
I'm not. I'm absolutely not. Michael, evidence was destroyed. The skin was destroyed by the government, lost or destroyed. fingerprints were lost and destroyed. Evidence was altered. The body. We found out.
That's a lie.
Now, who said that's a lie?
I did.
Fred, you're not helping me there. Fred Kassab, you said it's a lie.
He said evidence was destroyed. That is a barefaced lie.
Well, what about the skin that was found under Colette's fingernail?
That was not. That was lost. But however, now.
Well, okay. How about the fingerprints?
Well, then let Mr. Kassab respond.
The skin, so-called skin that he refers to as being lost, was something in a vial. It was scrapings from Colette's fingernails.
Yes.
It was put into a vial. Somebody said it looked like a piece of skin. It was lost. There's no doubt about that. However, it is my contention that that skin that was under Colette's fingernail came when she scratched McDonald in the chest, and he had scratch marks.
He didn't
on
have.
his chest.
Jeff, did you have scratch marks on you?
No, and the medical record supports
Of course
that.
he's going to say no. The testimony says he did.
He didn't have scratch marks.
Mr. Jackson, if I might have a word on this?
Do you mind, gentlemen? Yeah, doctor, yes.
Well, number one, I didn't have scratches on my chest. There were 4 examining physicians. They have all testified. None of them saw such scratches. The diagram drawn by the treating surgeon shows ice pick puncture wounds in my left chest and a linear incision or stab wound in the right chest.
What happened to the weapons?
Well, the weapons are in possession of the CID at this point.
They were left at the scene.
Could these injuries, let me ask Mr. Kassab, couldn't these injuries have been inflicted by somebody else rather than by MacDonald on himself?
They could be, only there wasn't any intruders in that house. There was not one shred of evidence that showed there was an intruder in that house.
Well,
That's not true, but that's all right.
May I return back to the comments about the piece of skin, because actually it's quite a pivotal piece of evidence.
Is it? Would you mind then, on that pivotal point, can we pause a moment and get back to it? And Mr. Kassab, I must tell you, I feel that I've conned you into speaking face-to-face with...
I think you have, yes.
Not by intent. Not by intent. Because you said to me you didn't want to speak to him after he came on, and I left it there and didn't pose any question. You jumped in on, respectfully, so you jumped in on something he said. So I'm just reminding you, you are both on the air. If you choose not to address Dr. MacDonald and vice versa, or vice versa, I certainly respect that. We'll continue in a moment. This is Talk Radio. I'm Michael Jackson. This is a unique situation. 3 people at odds here, and the situation, of course, the murder case. A woman, 2 lovely children, killed many years ago. The man found guilty is on the line. He's called from Terminal Island Prison, where he's serving many years. He, of course, the husband, former Green Beret Captain Dr. Jeffrey MacDonald. Fred Kassab, who at first was for his son-in-law, basically because I suppose he was your son-in-law, sir, right?
Well, basically because he was my son-in-law. I knew him. And not only that, but any information that I got, the government didn't give me any information at all. All the information I got was from MacDonald himself, in the same fashion as you're getting it now. When you hear only one side of the story, naturally you're at odds.
Captain, what would you like Mr. Kassab to know and to believe that he doesn't know and cannot believe?
Well, I think at this point, excuse me, Michael, I think at this point he won't believe anything that's factual in nature. He has taken an opinion that is unsupported by the facts as they are currently known. Now, admittedly, many of those facts were not known at trial in 1979. There's a large body of very significant information on the case that has come out since 1983, including about 37 witnesses that place Helena Stokely and her crowd at the crime scene. People who saw her going to the crime scene, coming from the crime scene, seeing her in the bloody clothing and boots, and the 7 items of suppressed evidence that the CID kept from us. If I could, I'd like to return to a minute for the skin, because actually it's a very important...
Pivotal, as you said.
Right, exactly. That skin was not just lost by anyone, as Mr. Kassab would have you believe. It was looked at under the microscope by William Ivory, chief investigator in the case. He wrote notes about it, he described it, he put measurements on it, and he said it was an oily piece of skin. It is never again discovered in the case. Unfortunately, the loss of the piece of skin was then hidden for 13 years. We found out about this in 1983. That piece of skin is similar to the signature of the murderer. It's just an absolutely crucial piece of evidence. Now, 18 years later, they try to say, and they have publicly by the prosecutors and Mr. Kassab, that, oh, it must have been MacDonald's skin. The problem with that theory is I didn't have fingernail scratches. I had ice pick stab wounds in the chest and stomach, and a knife stab wound in the chest that collapsed my lung. This is exactly how every major forensic fact in this case has been handled.
Couldn't that all be true, Mr. Kassab?
The only thing I can say is that the testimony at the trial was that there were scratch marks on his chest. Now, you can take it and you can do anything you want with it, but
yes,
the evidence is there in the court records.
The evidence that he's referring to, Mr. Jackson, happens to be a statement by a military policeman who was giving me mouth-to-mouth resuscitation. And his statement was he thought he saw scratches on my chest. The doctors, the physicians involved who examined me and wrote medical records and drew diagrams, unknown to us, by the way, for the CID, the diagrams which we obtained in 1983, clearly show an abdominal laceration of 3 inches in length into the rectus muscle, a stab wound of the right chest, and multiple ice pick wounds. It does not indicate anything about scratches or fingernail scratches.
Let me interfere just a minute.
Ted Gunderson, FBI.
This is so important, Michael, because from the skin, we could, or somebody, the forensic scientist, could have determined what type the person was who was scratched, what blood the person was who was scratched. That's why it's so critical.
Now, that's even, this is Dr. McDonald again. That is so important because what Mr. Kassab doesn't want you to know is that found on my wife's hand, on her hand, was blood that matches the blood type of Greg Mitchell. Greg Mitchell is the man that Helena Stokely said murdered my wife. His blood is on her hand.
Is that so, Mr. Kassab?
The type blood was type O, which is the same.
Universal.
Which is the same as Kristen's type blood.
Being your grandchild.
Oh, yeah, that's fine.
Let me also point out that Dr. Noguchi, the famous pathologist, has already said that she was has already said that Colette was attacked by a left-handed man, and Greg Mitchell was left-handed.
He hasn't even read the evidence.
How do you know?
Examine the evidence.
He read what you people gave him. And all of this, you know, I think we're all spinning our wheels. Everything that's been said here was said in court in 1984. And here is what Judge Dupre said. If the government was again called upon to present its evidence at a new trial, and McDonald was able to put all or even selected parts of his new evidence before a second jury, the jury would again reach the almost inescapable conclusion that he was responsible for these horrible crimes.
I don't care.
That's true. That is true.
That's not true, Jeff. I don't care who says that.
But wait a minute, the doctor said it's true. The doctor himself said it's true. Please respond.
No, don't misquote me, Mr. Jackson. What I said was Judge Dupree did say that. This is the same Judge Dupree whose son-in-law was my prosecutor. That was also his
son-in-law was his prosecutor. In
other words, when I was being investigated by the Justice Department in 1970, the man leading the charge against me, the man who in his own handwriting specifically turned the investigation from Helena Stokely to myself, is Jimmy Proctor. Jimmy Proctor was married to Judge Dupree's daughter. Judge Dupree has a granddaughter by this woman and this man, and that is the person who has made this ruling. Now, interestingly, in these notes by Mr. Proctor, he uses a phrase that Judge Dupree, maybe not surprisingly, quotes verbatim in 1979, 9 years later. He refers to her drug abuse and calls her a pathetic creature. Well, that pathetic creature, unknown to us, was a paid drug informant by William Ivory, the CID, the Fayetteville Police Department, and later, years later, the Nashville Police Department, in which she was such a qualified informant, she was being used on internal affairs investigations.
Okay. On that note, then, could we pause again? And I think we have a couple of really salient points to get to. On our conference lines, and this was not organized, Fred Kassab, father of the murdered Mrs. MacDonald and his 2 grandchildren. Ted Gunderson, the former FBI director in Los Angeles, who believes that the third caller is innocent, though he was found guilty of the murders of his wife and 2 children, Dr. Jeffrey MacDonald.
KABC, Talk Radio 790.
This is Talk Radio. I'm Michael Jackson. The final few moments left. Let me turn to each of the guests on the conference line. And let me ask first Mr. Kassab, as the father of and the grandfather of the murdered, what do you want to see happen?
Well, Nothing. Just going to stay the way it is. Any evidence they have, they can present in court. But let me just say one thing about this so-called Judge Dupre's son-in-law. Judge Dupre's son-in-law never had anything to do with the prosecution end of this case. When Dupre was appointed to the bench in 1970, within 2 months he resigned the U.S. Attorney's office. He was separated from Judge Dupre's daughter in 1970. He was divorced from her in 1971. Is absolutely...
Doesn't that negate what you're saying, Mr. Gunderson?
Well, no, as a matter of fact, it doesn't negate it at all, because I happen to know through various sources that Mr. Proctor is still receiving mail at Judge Dupre's office and has been for years.
So they are close.
They are close, obviously. And also, don't forget the fact that he's the grandfather.
You know, he's making statements that he... oh, well.
Well,
you can lie and lie and lie, but you can only...
Earlier in the show, I'm not a liar, my friend. And as a matter of fact, while we're talking about lies, Mr. Brian Murtaugh, in the government brief in response to one of ours, said that I altered and edited the taped interviews with Alina Stokely, which is absolutely not true.
Wait a minute, gentlemen, all of you. Dr. MacDonald, are you there?
Yes.
I've got, apparently, a witness on the line. Curtis?
Yes, sir.
Is that your name? How were you involved in all this?
Sir, I was at Fort Bragg at the time, and I was a Company C, 4th Battalion, 68th Armor, and I was a company clerk. Well, one of our people had been in trouble, was coming up on court-martial the next day. We had lost some records as to what it was, and I was in the provost marshal that all day and all night, reconstructing for his trial. That night, a call came in to one of the young specialists on the desk. A woman was a distraught woman. I couldn't hear the conversation. I heard it was related to his master sergeant there, the provost marshal. A woman came home and caught her husband molesting a daughter. Okay. I knew it was an officer by where they lived. I also knew that it was a Green Beret.
Now, wait a minute. Are you telling me that MacDonald molested somebody else's child?
No, wait just a minute.
Okay. Because I've only got a minute left, and I'd love him to respond.
First Sergeant blew it off, talking about...
Here. This is
First Sergeant was a lifer, talking about, well, that wouldn't happen. And then an officer wouldn't do that, and he dismissed it. And I always remember that. I didn't put it together. It was MacDonald molesting his child, and his wife caught him, and that was the reason for that murder.
In a way, that's your subjective view.
Well, that's not. That's that sergeant's subjective view, and the Army knew about that.
Dr. MacDonald, it's only fair that you respond.
Well, this is absolutely outrageous. I've been fighting this.
No, it's not outrageous.
Could he respond?
Every agency of the government, every agency within the United States government has examined me. There is absolutely nothing to verify that absolutely insane statement that gentleman just made.
Fred, are you going to second what he's saying, or you accept the fact?
I made the same statement as a possibility last year.
Why would you make the statement as a possibility only last year, sir?
Because it would answer all the questions of why the murders.
Had you any idea or inkling while he was your son-in-law and the children were alive that he would do such a thing?
None whatsoever.
Okay, so that's fair there. Doctor, what do you want to see happen?
Well, I want to see a door open into the courtroom, because the evidence that is now available clearly proves my innocence, and it's outrageous that I'm still sitting in federal prison, having served a total of 7 years, but been fighting this problem for 18 years.
I don't know when it will be resolved. Mr. Kassab, Mr. Gunderson, Curtis, who just called out of the blue, and Dr. MacDonald, thank you very much indeed.
Michael, may I say one real quick?
I've got to the end of the hour, sir.
Okay.
Thank you. Until tomorrow, I'm Michael Jackson. Bye now. God bless you.
KABC, Talk Radio 790.